Sorry, I don't know where the hand, can't find my hands up signal.
No
So I'm
worries,
just gonna
Liz,
go
is
for
it?
a question. It is
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah,
Thank you. So I'm looking at the CA2 and where I was just a little bit puzzled. So around the stakeholder piece, you said you'd like to see in the 5 slides. So are they the templates that you've given thereafter, or are we to insert our own slides for that stakeholder piece? I was just a little unsure.
yeah, sure. Really happy for you to. I mean, I'm always happy for people to do their own material, their own templates,
Yeah.
and so forth. What I shared is really a guide,
Yeah.
or
So that like technology piece is part of your stakeholder. Is that the way you've laid it out? And your design piece, is that part of the stakeholder? It's just the format of the slide I was unsure of.
do you have it
So
there, or will I try
I
and find
do have
it?
it
Yeah,
here.
do you
I
want to
don't know.
share it
Can I
there? And just
share?
so, yeah, you share
Yeah,
there. Yeah, can you
I'll
share?
share. I can share. I have it. Hopefully, yep, I have it here.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So you see this stakeholder,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Gareth. So
yeah,
it says,
yeah.
yeah, in one of your 5 stakeholder PowerPoint slides, I'd like to see. Oh, so which slides are you referring to? So
So what I've suggested to you in
yeah,
the assignment is that you would put it together a stakeholder communication plan,
right.
up to 5 slides. So that's why I
Okay,
referred to the 5 slides there.
okay,
And really, that should be that's your case for change, ultimately,
okay,
Liz. And what I'm saying is, one of those slides I'd like to be that kind of stakeholder map, which is on the right hand side.
okay, okay. That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So,
Yeah,
so who are the key stakeholders? What are their influence, and so on? I can't just see that here, but as I recall, it was, suggesting that you identify the stakeholders, who they are, their interests, their influence. That's usually the way we do stakeholders, and then how you're going to manage them, and who's going to do it. That would be typical.
excellent. Okay, that makes more sense to me now.
Yeah.
And thank you. And actually, could I ask the same question? Am I on the right track on my CA1? I know you're not divulging anything, and that's
Oh,
absolutely fine. Am
yeah.
I on the right track? And mine was a bit broader, but I was thinking of homing in a bit more on specifics for the roadmap.
Yeah. Right, I'm just having a look here now. Liz, what's your surname?
Oh, Lawler. It's going to give you my number, Lawler.
Yeah, you're in great shape.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Top of the tree. Top of the Christmas
Okay,
tree.
okay, that's good to know.
You get a
Thank you.
Christmas tree, the little band at the top, you're in there. So all good.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I'm just gonna try and figure out how I stop sharing now. You might want to kick me out of here now.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll take it back now.
yeah,
So
please. Thank you.
continue. Okay. Is that
But
taken away?
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank
is
you.
that taken away from you now?
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's the one you were sharing there. Right?
It was. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thanks very much.
So there's a few people who joined. Look, I'm happy to take questions, or I'm happy to do a little run through, whatever you'd prefer, folks. I can talk it through again, or happy to take questions if that makes it more relevant to you.
Hi, Garvan. It's Hiran here.
Hi, Kieran. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
I just want to check, Garvan, like when would be our final scores for the CA1 be available?
Oh yeah, Kieran, great. I'm going to have to check my emails here. I'm sharing them back this Monday, but I'm sharing them back a week ahead of when I've been asked to share them back, because they obviously trying to give me some time to get through them all. But what I'm really keen to do is get them scored and get them back to you, because I know they're important to you, and particularly for your CA2 and for the reasons you've said earlier. So I'm going to have them back with the IOB this Monday.
Okay.
And I'm going to have 2 asks from the IOB. One is to extend your deadline, as we've said this morning. And the second ask I'm going to put in is that they review and release your results as quick as they possibly can, because i.e. ahead of schedule, right? Because my only hesitation is that they won't do that is because I understand, isn't this course linked to another course for some people doing a master's? Isn't there? There's 2 running in parallel.
Yeah.
Yep. Forgive
For
me.
me as well, to be honest, I have another one coming up as well. So
Yeah, yeah. So there. I don't know and we'll have to ask them. So I will ask them to cascade back to you. Are they going to extend the date, and how quickly can they issue the results? My only caution in saying, they usually have them out within a couple of days of me providing them, is that if there's a dependency on Helen's assignment, which I think is the one that's running in parallel,
Yeah.
they may not be able to release mine until they have Helen's as well, and I've no idea what Helen's timelines are. I think we've all been given the timeline of next Friday. I'm trying to get them in this Friday or Monday. So they'll be with you in the next week to 2 weeks at latest. It's probably the best I can tell you right now, and I'll write to the IOB and ask them to tell everybody when to expect them. How's that?
Yeah, that should be fine, Garan.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, hopefully that answers. Sorry, I can't answer the technical IOB side of things.
No, I do understand, because they have their own way of, and there are so many timelines and other teams and people involved. So it's just not one party really. So it's it's multiple stakeholder management, to be honest. So
surely is that. It's a case of that for sure. Absolutely. Okay. So hopefully that helps her on. Now the only other reason is, this course may be linked to people doing asset and liability management and AML and financial crime, because they also come up in some kind of drop-down menu on separate groups. But that may be just a technical thing, that those programs are also mentioned beside ours in some kind of drop-down menu. The one I use as a lecturer, I've got a faculty login that I use that's different from yours. But I think it's just Helen's program that's linked.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Are you enjoying the data and analytics? I as well as designing this one back in the day, I designed that one, and so I'm putting myself out there now for for some slaughter. If you don't like it, hopefully it's going well for you though.
I think your content is well advanced and very relevant in that sense. To be honest, I was talking to some of my colleagues the other day. I was telling about your slides. I find it very informative and useful. Sometimes too much information, to be honest. There's too much of, but I am impressed by your curiosity, to be honest, to keep a tab of whatever happening across the dimensions, because it's too much information at the moment. We have so much of social media, this and that, and so to filter out what is relevant and what is not itself is a challenge. But I think you put it across in a nice way, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. I might try and prune things in then for Tuesday. But I've sometimes lived with the philosophy. My value is I'm going to give you more, and I'm going to let you figure out, whether you need it all or whether you need to get it to less, which I know puts some of the onus back on you. But maybe that's just the value I've lived by, and maybe I need to change that value. But I'm kind of giving you more on the basis that you'll either use it all or some of it, rather than give you some of it and wonder why you didn't get it all. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I do also enjoy the mix of things in your presentation overall, the content, the videos, different, because I think it's visually, it's basically different sensors, and it's easy for me to, as a person, I'm also very attracted to different, content formats rather than the same type of content formats. So for me, then it is more exciting and interesting, to have a different combination of things there. Okay. But it's my personal preference, really,
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you. And Michael gave me some great feedback on just making sure that I acknowledge the neurodiversity. It might be just a broad headline, which was really good as well, feedback, and I was very thankful for that. So I'll
no worries, Garan. Garan, can I also check on my assignment? I know, because to be honest, I struggled a lot with it. Now my name is, I think, different in the platform.
What is it on the platform?
It's the same name goes as Samarakon.
Anybody, any other questions there we can deal with before everything?
Yeah, Darwin, just one question. I was actually going through the assignment 2 slides that you uploaded. So I think most of the things are quite clear about the team app and slides to support the team app and the stakeholder communication, etc. The slides that you've also added, some of the slides that we are covering today, do you expect those slides to be added as part of assignment 2 as well, like the digital technology balancing supply and demand, etc.?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. So I'm still looking through it here. So, but I mean, there's only three more kind of slides because there's only three more vectors. So there's one on technologies, one on people, and there's one on risk. And we'll get to the risk on Tuesday. So I'm only asking you, yeah, does that make sense?
So this balancing supply and demand, for example, under what vector does this fall under then?
So just give me the point on supply and demand again.
So the slide says digital technology balancing supply and demand. So under what vector does this fall? Does this fall under technology?
Oh yes, sorry, apologies. That's the technology. Apologies.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. So on the technology one, you're really evaluating: do you have all the capability you need, and is it constructed with those design principles in mind? Do you remember the stuff I was mentioning this morning? So that's really what I'm looking for you to evaluate.
Yeah, and then the 9, the one that you said, the 9 dimensions of digital DNA, that must be the people aspect of the vector, right? That is the people vector.
That's right, yes.
Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah. Taran, I haven't got to yours yet. Yours is in the outstanding bucket for the weekend.
Okay. All right.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, I had to get.
No, that's fine.
They're all at the end of the list, so I had to go to the end of the list.
No, that's fine, Garan. One more question actually, because when we did the CA1 also, we based it pretty much on our organization, like the same, like angle. So in our CA2, we are looking at the same way. So it's like some points I feel like there's going to be some area that is going to be like, again, more like developed and, enhanced in the CA1, some of the point that we had already point out that something is like.
Taran, did I miss all of that? Did I miss?
Sorry.
You're back. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Sorry. My question is basically like, because in CA1 also we refer to our own organization, so companies. Yep. So in the CA2 also we are going to like enhance that, like to the next sort of stage using the the frameworks you've shared. So I feel like there are certain points that might be like again repeated. Is that something that you would expect?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the work that you've already done on the first 7 vectors, first 7 building blocks, you're just carrying that through, adding, technology, people, and risk, and then building it out to 10, and then you're creating a roadmap for executing a program of change in order to enable the 10 to deliver strategy and results. That's the simplest way.
Yeah.
So you're going to use the 7. Now you might want to revisit the 7 and update them or upgrade them. You may not. Leave that to you. But I think if I'm answering, if that's the question, do we use the 7 and then add another 3 and then do a roadmap to deliver strategy and results? That's what you're doing in assignment 2.
Yeah.
Great. And a stakeholder map, which is basically creating the case for change to get the organization behind you to execute that. That's what the stakeholder piece is. Yeah.
So basically, pretty much you're laying that foundation through your CA1 plus the other 3 factors.
Correct.
And then basically approaching your stakeholder, like in that sense.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Garania. Thank you. I took too much of your time. Sorry. Thank you.
No. Thanks. Good questions. Chris, you were next, I believe. Hopefully, I haven't.
Yeah, I was just obviously I haven't got the results from CA1 yet, but I was kind of looking to do the 10 vectors as an appendix, and then kind of just do a roadmap, kind of intro, mega trends and banking, current state to be,
Perfect.
and then the 3 teams are underpinning my roadmap, and then having the roadmap at the end.
I'm loving that.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm looking forward to reading that. And I'm not being glib. Genuinely, that's exactly what I'm looking for. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Memo. Here's what we've diagnosed. Here's the roadmap. Here's the key points about the roadmap. And your case for change, and then with your transformation, your 1-page transformation plan, and then your appendix with your 7 plus 3 new ones. That's exactly it. That nails it. Does that help, Chris?
Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah,
that was my question too, so that's great.
Yeah, good. And again, it's on the slide that's showing there, so hopefully you can all see that as well. Now, Sylvia, I didn't get to you yet. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Sorry.
Good, thank you.
Just a little cough there. Okay, so I know everybody has been asking their specific questions, but I just wanted you to go through what's your expectation, like the complete of the CA2, not just a specific one. So do you mind to just briefly explain your expectations?
No problem at all. So really what I'm looking to do is the minimum requirement is the 10 vectors to be done as you've all done brilliantly for the first 7. So it's basically take the 7 forward. Sylvia, you've done 7. So you're going to take them forward. You have an opportunity to refine and review those now if you want, right? But again, I'm going to leave that to you, but it's to take those 7 and now add 3, technology, people and risk. So then you have 10. So then you have 10 of assessments of where you are, where you want to get to, and an idea of how to do that. And then I want to plot the initiatives for how you want to do that onto a transformation map like that. And they're the core artifacts. That's a kind of the minimum pass level is I want those 2, Sylvia. Okay. If I don't get those 2, I kind of can't really pass you because you haven't done, yeah, right?
Okay, got it.
If I don't get those 2, I can't pass you. If I get those 2 and they're kind of reasonably done, right?
Yeah.
Right. You get a thumbs up, right? So, and what you need to do is just put a memo that articulates, why you've chosen what you've chosen to do in the transformation map. So again, that's a little bit like taking your first memo and just finishing it out with the additional 3 and making the kind of position that this is the transformation that needs to be undertaken to close the gap to execute strategy to deliver results. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so that's it. And then there's one other piece, which is to give me a communications plan, 5 slides, that is your pitch or on the case for change. And one of those slides, I would expect to see a stakeholder map. So in other words, in order for the organization to undergo this transformation that I've put into my roadmap, here's all the people that I need to convince. They'll be on your stakeholder map. This is the influence they have, this is the interest that they have, and this is how I'm going to influence them. That's kind of all I need.
Okay. And then there are other slides as well. So is it like additional or?
And then if you choose, which lots of you have, so that's the pass mark, right?
Okay.
So the pass mark is, sorry, let me go back. One of those, sorry, forgive me, they're moving here.
And the T map.
Yeah, and the T map, a memo, and a communications plan, right?
Okay.
So that's pass mark. And then what lots of people have been doing is they've given me anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 slides for each of the vectors to show that they've gone down and done deeper analysis. If you've got that, just share it with me. And by sharing that with me, you're kind of really getting into the gritty of it, the teeth of it, and that's what moves you up from a D to a B to a C to an A. And how cogently then, or how you bring all that together and create a compelling case. So the deeper you go, the more points you get. That's the kind of the rule.
Okay.
That's the rule. That's the equation.
Okay. Because there are these other slides around the epicenter digital leadership flywheel. Then there is this values for DNA or for digital culture and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's where I was going as to, because so far everybody's questions were kind of focusing on the stakeholder map.
Yeah.
But then there are other slides as well around design principles.
Yeah.
Digital balancing is what you earlier explained around heat map. It could be reused, etc. But then there are more down as well. So do we focus on those aspects as well?
Yeah, you do. So if you and I'm going to give you all the key slides that I'm suggesting you use. So I'll have all those packaged up for you, Sylvia. Bless you. So like I've given you a slide for each for the first 7, I'll complete that out, and on Tuesday you'll have 10 slides that you can use to back it up. Is that okay? Does that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Sorry.
And not at all, Sylvia. Thank you. And
Thanks.
because I just started taking questions at the start, and we better get back into it now. We were doing this kind of the stakeholder ones, and you probably came in there. But really, what I wanted to do was answer your question for everybody, right?
Okay.
And again, just a quick recap is it's all written down in the assignment 2 guidance, which is already uploaded to the IOB Learn, and says the assignment should contain the following elements: an executive cover note, no more than 1,500 words, which is a summary pre-read for the 10 vector assessment and the roadmap. So, and then I just want the 10 vector assessment and the roadmap. So one slide with either the T-map or the linear map. So if you remember, I said some people mightn't like the T-map, so do a linear map, right? So that's fine. So I'm trying to find my slide. And then, you're going to put in the supporting slides. So I probably haven't articulated there that I want the vector one, so I'll update that. But give me the vector analysis, give me the corresponding roadmap, give me a memo, and give me a stakeholder communications plan, which is a case for change. So that's it. That's all we need. Simple as that.
And just one silly question around there. So what happens is when we try to put for the 7 vectors, at least for my slides, I couldn't fit in one, so I have just put it into 2 slides.
Yeah.
I hope that's fine. I mean, I've made sure the words and all are fine,
Yeah.
count, but it just goes over.
Don't worry about that. Don't, as I said to everybody before, don't get hung up on format. Just give me your best thinking. It's the thinking, not the style.
Okay.
Style makes a little difference in this, but not much, right?
Okay.
And it's more about your storytelling, more about, tell a story that's cogent and convincing. Don't worry about the colors and how many pages it gets. That's okay. I mean, one of your assignments was 54 pages. That's fine. And some of them were 5. So, and that's fine. So don't worry about the number and the format. Think about, showing me your thinking and using the templates as a way to do that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, everybody back. It's 1:30, and hopefully with Sylvia's questions, we've covered that off, and I will be covering assignment 2 again on Tuesday. But hopefully between the last day today and Tuesday, if you haven't been listening in, hopefully the instructions from the recording and also written down, like the one I have in front of you, hopefully that's all helping to make sense. You're all doing wonderful so far. I know you haven't got your feedback back, but you're all getting C's, B's, and A's. So you're on the right path. It's just about building forward from here and closing the loop. And if any of you have any anxiety, questions, queries, suggestions, please come to me offline, and I will do my best to get to you as quick as I can. Okay, so I'm going to move on after that. I didn't get to show you my lunch slide, so I'll show you my nice lunch slide, and we will kick on. Now, one of the artifacts I wanted to leave you with, again, at the risk of giving you too much information, but you can read this, and I'll summarize it here. HBR did a fantastic article on the value of transformation back in 2023 with a particular focus on financial services. And they used Finalta analysis. So some of you may or may not know Finalta. They're an independent benchmarking firm. McKinsey own them now. And they used analysis of global banking between 2018 and 2022 to understand the performance difference between organizations who were deemed to be digital leaders versus digital laggards, right? And they in the article you can get in and see what's a leader and a laggard, right? The bottom line is, on the very left, there's a little green sticker that says 89% active. So 89% of organizations said at that point in 22, 23 that they had a digital transformation. Interesting, 11% didn't. So that's really interesting. Of those that did, the leaders are reporting a differential to laggards of 31% more revenue and 25% less costs in that 4-year period. So there's a delta between leaders and laggards summarized up at 30% more revenue, 25% less cost. And then if you dig that down into my little grid on the right-hand side, that it's not in the article, I've just plucked the numbers out of the article and I'm sharing them with you there, because this really helps for the case for change. Should you need that for your assignment 2, hint, hint. Average shareholder annual returns for leaders is at 8% versus laggards at 4.9%. That's a CAGR, so that's an annualized delta. So 8% per annum versus 4% per annum, right? So that's a 3.2% CAGR return, which is, kind of pointing to that 30% revenue differential. The return return on tangible equity, so return on equity on the balance in the financials of the balance sheet. For laggards, it's in the range of 13.6 to 15.3. For leaders, it starts at 15.5 and goes to 19.3. So ROTE is obviously an investor measure for how much are we getting back for the equity that we've got in the business that we own. So that's the way shareholders will think about it. Laggards have an active customer base. Leaders have a cumulative a CAGR of 5% per annum. So they're growing. Laggards are not growing. And in a world where the populations are growing, if you're static, it means you're declining. Retail revenues were declining 1.4%. That's why it's in red for laggards, and by 8%. So that's a 2.2% annual differential. So again, explaining some of the revenue delta at 31%, and then their operating expenses increasing. Laggards are increasing by 2.3% per annum, and leaders are declining at 1.3%. So their cost base is declining. If you're a leader, if you're a laggard, it's increasing. It's a really good article, and if you want help on the case for change, it's worth having a look through. And the article goes into, the how. So it's creating ambitious, focused transformation roadmaps. It's building quality digital talent bench, operating model, distributed technology environment and modern software engineering practices, data products and modern data architecture, and then change management that ensures digital solutions are adopted and can scale, which is a lot of the culture stuff that we've done today. So definitely worth a little bit of a read through that. Another one that I'll leave you with is, and this links us back to, and kind of probably maybe hops us in to organizational structures, a really good article on how Apple is organized for innovation. And really interestingly, lots of organizations are trying to create matrices, and organizing kind of Scrum, Squad-esque, cross-functional teams who are working together across, let's say, journeys, so the mortgage journey, or who are working, across product lines. So, so it could be the home buying journey, or it could be the mortgage product line. Really interestingly, so I'm just let somebody in. Really interestingly, Apple have persistently, from Steve Jobs' time in 1998 right through to 2019 when this was written, and if you do the analysis, more or less continues through in Tim Cook's era, 2019 forward, they continue to organize in specialisms. So design and hardware and so on and so on. Now, over time, as their portfolio has become bigger, and as the world, and their portfolio has become bigger because they've been more innovative, but they've more technology prowess and capability to harness to become bigger, but they've continued to adopt a functional approach. So they're organized in hardware, engineering, hardware technology, software services, machine learning, and so on and so forth. And obviously you'd expect machine learning and AI today, that's a big specialism or a big functional capability, which maybe wasn't around so much in 1998. We all know the reasons why, and so on and so forth. But down the very bottom, they say that it's Apple's, they've kind of said, we need to organize in functional specialism, because at every level from senior vice president, so in other words, the people who sit at the top of the table, they're expected to possess three key leadership characteristics. And the first of those being deep expertise. That means they can really get down, right from the most senior level, they can really get down into hardware engineering or hardware technology or software service or machine learning or operations or finance or whatever it is. So they expect their people to really own their domain, their individual function, as they call it. So then they expect immersions in the details of those, and they this is how they engineer mastery. So do you remember we were talking about mastery earlier on, and ownership, right, and mastery, and I was bringing it up in my VR example this morning. And they expect people to own this mastery and bring their mastery to the table. But then the second thing is a willingness to collaborate and to collaboratively debate with other functions during collective decision making. So you come from your function, but you gather as a collective to build amazing products. So deep expertise, immersion in detail of those functions and of their products, and a willingness to collaborate. So I kind of just wanted to mention that and give you that article. It's a smashing article to read if you get a little bit of a chance. And over here, I mean, they talk about the example of Apple's attention to detail, that when they bring people together, engineers, product people, designers, what do I call it? People who do the casing and so on and so forth, they come together to debate and to master what's unique. And they talk about Apple's attention to detail. And we all, you may all or may not have iPhones. There's a little iPhone there. And we've all kind of marveled at the corners of the iPhone. I'm holding it the wrong angle, the corner there. And that's just like a snapshot on the over here where I'm putting my cursor at the corner. And it shows how they do this thing called the squircle. And it's a design and it's an aesthetic thing, is that they don't do a perfect sort of, rounded rectangle, that they do this squircle. So they fatten out some of the edges to create this unique Apple feel that nobody else does, because everybody else does a rounded rectangle. They've got a squircle. It's hardly noticed by the human eye, but yet it's a very distinctive feature. Psychologically, it's much more appealing. And the point being that these are the kind of debates at this level of detail that they expect people to be able to come in and immerse themselves upon. But again, it's customer obsession, because Jobs, and it lives true from his days, it's about working from the customer back. And if you recall, one of my slides from last week on technology was, you don't work from technology forward, you work from the user back. And everything that they do works back. So on, everyone is expected to come with their specialism to debate and solve for the most delightful design, the most delightful experience, and to innovate forward all the time. I'm not doing the article or Apple any justice, of course, by sharing that with you, but I do encourage you to read it, because it gives a really good perspective, again, like Jassy stuff, on how design makes a difference. Okay, so I'm going to leave a couple of other. Everyone okay? Okay, everyone doing all right? So we keep moving. Any questions, any queries, just pop them in the chat, and I'll come back to some of those. There's a couple of questions there, so I'll come back to them a little bit later on. I'm going to leave a couple of other slides in the background. If you're interested in, values and principles, a fantastic book on the All Blacks. And I'll put in 2 slides on the 15 All Black principles. They're the best fidelity I can get them from online. You have to kind of read the book to read about the 15 principles. They're all there. But again, it's a really good signpost to the idea of crystallizing, writing down, sharing, and moving from values to action. So sweep the sheds, only one I'll cover. And it's this idea, this value that the All Blacks hold, that when you go and play a match, no matter how big or how small, when you come back to the dressing room and there's muck everywhere and there's blood and there's all kinds of stuff, no matter what your role is on the team, whether you're the coach, whether you're a forward, you're a back, you're a sub, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets stuck in and they sweep the shed. So it's a terminology from New Zealand, but it's this idea that you're not above a station. Everybody mucks in, everybody plays their part, and you do the grunt work as well as doing the fantastic stuff in the field. So it's this idea of writing this down and passing that on. And the whole idea of legacy is that they've codified their culture and they write it down, and they've got this black book that every new player for every new Kiwi gets, and they're expected to own it. The first half of the black book is filled with pictures of hundreds of years old of teams with all these principles written down, but the book is only half filled because they talk about every All Black continues to build a legacy and continues to move things forward, and continues this idea, created learning environment, etc. Excuse the French, D-heads, but again, it's plain language. It's bringing it into stuff. So if you're interested in this whole area of values, read it. And again, I put another slide in here, which is around how Google write down their 10 things to be true, focus on the user. It's best to do one thing really, really well. Again, you can read them in the background or go online and pick them out. Idea being folks who are really focused on curating the right kind of values at the bottom of the iceberg to enable, and they talk about them, Florida Effect, to kind of engender the new ways of working, the new ways of acting, to be digital. They codify it, they write it down, and they convert it from thinking into what it looks like to action. So hopefully I have more than covered that for you today, but that's a really important piece. Am I not sharing anything? Somebody said I'm not sharing. Is my slide sharing, folks?
Yeah,
I can see it.
Yeah, on full screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Shino, maybe there's a challenge on your screens there, so that's okay. Look, if there's anything I'm missing like that, folks, jump in straight away. So before I move on, the CA2 to be done in Word doc instead of PowerPoint. I don't mind. You do it in Word doc or PowerPoint. I'm easy. You've all done it in different ways. It doesn't matter to me. Once the content is good, I'm not worried about style or format. So do it whatever way you want. So just thought I'd come back in on that. Okay, cool. I'm going to keep going. So one of the, and I'm kind of leading on from Google, and if you recall, I said I was going to work through this pyramid, and that we've quite a bit of it done. We talked about values, we've talked about behaviors, and I'm going to talk now policy, rewards, and skills and methods, and structure and customs. So we have a bit to do, but we'll fly through this, and we get to a little exercise before we wrap at 3. One of them is around rewards, and one of the things that Google has done is they introduced this idea of objectives and key results. And essentially what they try and attempt to do is connect strategy down to what every individual will be responsible for. So they're almost kind of like creating a pyramid. It's probably better articulated with this slide. So let's say a strategic objective is to acquire customers, okay? And what they do is they set out 2 dimensions to that. They set out an objective, so sustainable growth of the customer base. So, and then like data-led ambition, they put a result on it, and it's a tangible, measurable result. So again, you can, in your slides, you'll be able to see, the guidance on, forgive it, it's all gone a bit slow with Zoom, on how they make things tangible as opposed to loosey-goosey, right? So you can look at that later on. So, but just think of that principle of it's really tangible. So the objective is sustainable growth. So everyone's clear, well, okay, growth is important. That's what the strategy says. We've got to have sustainable growth. And then they say, but let's make that measurable. So it's 20,000 new active users per quarter, right? So, and you can see they put a definition of active users. And then they start, so that's kind of what that's what maybe the executive team might own, and that's what the chief commercial officer might own. But then they start breaking that down and creating a pyramid of objectives and key results that roll down and then roll up. So for instance, the chief commercial officer might have that sustainable growth, 20,000 views per quarters. But then what they'll do is they'll go to their digital kind of teams and they'll say, okay, so who's responsible down here for registration? So for getting new customers registered on our digital infrastructure, or, our online banking or whatever it is. And they'll say, right, what we want you guys to do is focus on growing registrations by 3,000 per month. And the key result is you've got to fill the top of the funnel with quality interested customers. And then they further break that down into what do individuals on the team need to do. So somebody needs to be focused on running ongoing acquisition campaigns, and they've got a target of 5,000 targets a month, 4,000 delivered nudges a month. Somebody needs to be on the e-commerce kind of brief, which is they track and manage the prospect funnel. So what they're doing is people are going into the top of the funnel, the 5,000 targets as they're coming in. They need to be, when people showing interest and clicking contact me, they need to be making 1,000 calls out, and it needs to be done in 24 hours. And then there's the ongoing maintenance of UX through call to actions, click-throughs, so that they're learning. So somebody's responsible for identifying how they can increase the click-throughs so that we can increase the outbound calls, because ultimately that's where the measure of success comes from. So they're responsible for driving identifying and improving the user experience, so putting the click to action button in a better place on screen so that more people will click it. So they have a target of 1% CTA improvement, on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, and also that they've got retention rates of 5%, so that, i.e., their experience when people get into the portal, that they're staying, that we're only losing 5%, so that people like the experience when they get there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So this is the idea of drilling down, objectives. And you might say, well, that's not digital, Garvin. But it's not. You can do that whether you're adopting digital or not. But this is just a practice of embedding OKRs as a kind of a method to get everybody engaged, get everybody involved, and get everybody pointing in the same direction. So I'm linking it back to my my digital DNA, because this meets and I'm flicking back to find my slide, because this meets the idea that everybody's working towards a defined North Star, so everybody's pointing in the same direction. It's data-led, everybody's involved, so the whole network is involved. Everybody is driving towards innovation. Sorry, that flicked on me. And that they're building this idea of continuous improvement. How do we work to be better all the time? And that's with the UX stuff, etc. So wanted to share that with you. And again, you get all the slides, you can look at those afterwards. There's a few slides there on it. Okay, so rewards are really important in terms of what gets measured gets done, what gets rewarded also gets done, right? So your measurements and your rewards need to tally. And again, just a little slide, everyone's going to have a base salary, but progressive organizations do have progressive reward structures, and they typically balance those between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So the extrinsic motivators are, is kind of things that you receive on the outside. So it's okay, it's money, right? Or it's equity. So it's bonuses. It's everyone expects to get salary, but it's what on top of. Reward is on top of salary. So what do you get in bonus? What do you get in equity? Maybe what you get in knowledge learning, i.e. paid for courses, or also what you get from the outside is celebration. And again, Thrivers are digital leading organizations with strong digital culture and DNA, focus on identifying and acknowledging and commemorating or praising, what people did, whether it's good or didn't work, it doesn't matter. And oftentimes it's as much about identifying and lauding people for trying things, for innovating, and failure can be good, failure can be celebrated. And oftentimes they will do that. But that's the stuff that they get on the outside. We know in psychology that we're more likely to pursue more or drive further if we're intrinsically motivated. Now, and really the rub on this is extrinsic motivation gets you so far, but to really unlock discretionary effort, to say that you've got to connect to the inside. And almost this is like taking the iceberg and saying the extrinsic is above the waterline. That's what's visible. So visible, bonus, equity, paid for knowledge and learning, and so on. But connecting to really unlock discretionary effort below the waterline, the part of the iceberg at an individual level that you can't see, is giving people access to opportunity, giving people the ability to control their own schedule, dictate their own work, identify their own projects that they want to work on, giving people exposure, stretch assignments, rotation assignments, the ability to get, to grow by getting exposed to, challenged in new areas, new situations, new stimulations, and then really, really, really importantly, purpose, the opportunity to make a difference. Like Apple, or like Amazon, most centric in the world, empower every organization to achieve more, Microsoft, etc. That idea of connecting people to a vision, connecting people to a purpose. And there's loads of writing on this. If you want to come, I've already given you loads of stuff, but if you want to come to me afterwards and see some more material on this, happy to share it. But there's loads of empirical evidence that organizations who unlock intrinsic motivations, particularly around purpose, see a delta in performance, not just at an individual level, but actually at a collective level. So that's in terms of profit, market share, innovation, speed, agility, all those kind of things. So really important when we're designing culture to design how we want to set performance, measure performance, and then obviously to reward it as well. Two final pieces on this is policy. So, putting, principles into practice, and again is really important. And this is kind of almost like anti-bureaucracy practices in an organization. For every organization will have, health, safety, and conduct and disciplinary processes. Of course they will. But building policies in an organization that support culture are really important. Getting bureaucracy out of the way is obviously one of those, but thinking about embedding in purpose and values into everyday work. So, thinking about hiring based on people who seem more motivated to work for the purpose of the organization is a way to hardwire, decision-making and designing for culture into the organization. Access and flexibility. So enabling teams and leaders. So a principle that we might want in our organization is enabling teams and leaders to access talent within and without in accordance with the needs, duration, and collective good. So a flexible talent model. And how that works is in practice that, creating almost like a marketplace. So leaders need to unlock unlock their resources, so that talent is rotating and talent is available to move across the organization with the appropriate permissions and backfills, obviously. So we create a kind of a contract economy. And that kind of contract economy is on the basis that, we bring people in we don't contract them for domains, we contract them for outcomes. And we get the best people basically to work on the best projects to unlock their best capabilities. So again, these are kind of some of the practices of leaders. You can read through these. They're not consummate and they're not exhaustive, but they're to give you an idea of how we think about putting culture into action using principles that are defined into practices. Skills are obviously a huge part of because everything we're talking about is we're talking about the new, so these are new capabilities that organizations are trying to build in order to succeed in a new digital environment and deliver new strategies to deliver greater outcomes. So really working on skills. So on the left, and you can click through it if you're interested in double clicking, but as on a slide here, McKinsey had a really seminal article on, after a very significant research around what are the skills necessary for the digital age. And there's cognitive, interpersonal, self-leadership, and digital skills. So digital are more technical. self-leadership are, well, they're innate, kind of, those kind of like that leadership skills we talked about earlier on, but interesting interpersonal skills, this idea of being able to collaborate and enable to communicate and motivate and energize, across organizations, really important. Links back to the Apple case, links back to the Amazon case that we shared, and this idea of cognitive. So, you've got to be technical and cognitive. So flexibility, strong storytellers, be, a critical thinker and a problem solver. So, it's a really good list to think about and work from. You can create a nice scorecard out of it and evaluate your own and your team's capabilities in that regard. It misses, in my view, it misses a few things, so I just put them on the right-hand side. API management, visualization, digital product management, etc., etc. And on digital product management, I think we touched on this before, this idea around, perpetual coming in every day and saying, how did yesterday go? Let's look at the data. Let's decide what we should do next. Framing that in terms of being the most important thing to do and ruthlessly prioritizing, then visualizing success, building it, coding it, using the team to do that, which is crowd power, and then thinking about how do we enable the adoption, really, really important part of product management and not many people talk about. But how do we, as we're continuously developing and improving, how do we make sure that we're holding the hands of people to make sure they adopt it, they like it, they get comfortable with it, and ultimately it becomes espoused within them. And then they're continuously learning, which is kind of leads back to data every day, so that they're perpetually, constructively dissatisfied to improve. I mean, that's what product management is. If you want to read more on product management versus product management, I've put in a couple of slides for you that makes kind of some HBR articles on, the importance of project management, because it's not to undo that. So we really need strong discipline with the idea that with ambidextrous roadmaps, we need to be more disciplined, more structured. We need to do more better. So the project management is really important, but product management is really important, and it's probably much newer to us. So that's why we talk about it more. And again, there's some good, and what I've given you here, some extracts from a really good Deloitte paper that you can go and read, and that talks about what the product manager, what they must possess. They're almost like a mini CEO. Is a great way to think about it. So they've got to be business focused. They've got to be data focused, they've got to be human centric, and they've got to be tech focused, and they've got to encompass all that together, create a vision for their product, their service, the experience that they're responding, bring a team together in order to work around that flywheel, and that they've got to be enabled by really good project management skills. But project management is just part of it. It's so much more. It's about, understanding the business we're in, researching, building a program, creating a vision, using analytics, experimenting, reporting, using the network, partnering with teams, building squads, and then really understanding about how technology can be engineered and can unlock success. So really important parts of the jigsaw. And the final piece I'll leave you with before we move on is on digital skills. In 22 Salesforce, I think they've updated it since, but this is just a slide to show that they've a really, really cool digital skills index. You can click on it here and pop into it when you get your slides, and it shows what's the digital skills index actually for every country, and Ireland's covered. And then you can dig down to it into age profiles, career progression, and it'll give you a view on what are the skills required and what's the benchmark skills in globally, Europe, in Ireland, etc., etc. So look, if you want to dig into that, you can certainly dig into that. Okay, time to pause there. That's the majority of the content done. Any questions, any thoughts, any queries on that? Just checking in on the chat. How's everyone doing? We all okay? Everyone good? We keep going? Yeah?
Hey, sorry, you were talking about the objectives and key results, which, for example, you say the one example growth, I can read now like I don't know, the target or whatever objective,
Yeah.
But for example, one of the things like I would like to set an example. My company is, like creating new products or something like that.
Yeah.
Creating campaigns, as you say, an objective, but then what they don't see is how easy is to create that product. For example, in our system, how easy is, to resolve that. And for example, what I want to go with that is because you are saying like is the people reward spine, like the way like how siloed, the departments can be, but
Yeah.
the solution is only, just ask how easy is, for example, insert that product in the system or just to meet the customer expectation. I don't know if,
Yeah.
because it's not only like the objective, as you say, the campaigns and everything is what is behind, like
Yeah, it's what's behind the experience, Grace. Yeah. So I don't know if this is answering your question or if there's a query there, but if you think about that, if the objective is to innovate to create a better experience, that should flow down through into the different domains of an organization, and so that there's everyone's playing their part in terms of doing that. So if we say our objective is to create a new product for a market, what we should be doing is lining people up to do that. So that'll be, maybe some design thinkers. It might be then some commercial people. It might be some engineers. It might be some compliance people. So you're kind of gathering those, and then, you're giving them responsibility for developing a new product. And then in an OKR world, you'll be giving those people a specific, and you'll be giving them an objective and rewarding them to play their role in terms of designing a new product to achieve what you want to do in the marketplace. I don't know if that's helping, Grace.
Yeah, it's more like, as you're saying, like it's like lean up and get the people involved in the product, as you say, like to get involved in that new innovation.
That's right. So engineers, might have, the responsibility. Their responsibility should be to build to the needs of the user, and that should be articulated. And again, if you think about the Agile Manifesto, that's where we start, etc. But equally, the compliance person, this is where this really comes to life, or doesn't come to life in lots of organizations. Compliance are seen as the business. I don't know. There's a word that people use. Business prevention, which is not fair. But often that's because their objectives and their rewards are purely based on just risk, Grace, right? So if you give people an objective, which is to minimize the risk, of course they're going to say no. And if you're going to reward them on doing that, of course they're going to say no. So, what you have to do is start to craft the right objective and results for people working in the second line, for instance, to make sure that the product is released safely. So you reorientate their objective to building a product that is going to meet the standards and requirements of maybe regulation, or is going to meet internal security standards, or whatever it is. But their objective starts with building a product, and they'll be rewarding on the product's release and the product's ability to meet the compliance or the regs and so on and so forth. So then they start to become implicit in product development, and then they start to become part of the network. But it starts with they're responsible for successfully releasing a product that is compliant. It's not binary in terms of making sure that the product is or isn't compliant. Their role is to successfully release products that are compliant. Do you get the little subtlety that's in that kind of statement, Grace?
Yeah, thank you very much, Arban.
Yeah, really important points. So thanks for bringing on that one. Okay. Any other questions? Any other thoughts? Ryan is coming back in. Okay, we've just a little bit less than an hour to go. We can stay longer if you want to stay longer, but I'm going to kind of just schedule it on that basis. And then I want to get you into the kind of the last part of the conversation, which is it's as I'm trying to bring to life for you, we need to think about how we think and converting that into acting in such a way that we're embracing the capabilities that digital empowers upon us, but that we're working with new methods, with new mindsets in order to go faster, be more customer obsessed, create better experiences, etc., etc. And therefore, digital transformation, our ability to be successful is very much down to our philosophy and so on. But sometimes we've got to think about how we engineer everybody and bring them together and organize them in such a way that people can collectively do that together. And that comes down to kind of what I call the hard and the soft degrees, but these are the structures and the customs. This is kind of on the water lines, okay? And again, you'll see another kind of nice slide, Bill Gates. This is about thinking about the nervous system of the organization. This is about thinking about how to bring everything together so that we get act and react kind of mechanisms going. And that's what we're going to try and talk about. But let me try and bring that to life. And again, you'll get these in slides, and I'm going to get you to do an exercise on the operating system canvas. But zooming out for that and then kind of coming top down, there's really two big levers that organization, there's probably more, but I'm going to say to you that there's two big levers that we can think about engineering so that we, embrace and channel these values into collective action. And that's about how we structure ourselves, which is on the left-hand side, and that's the hard side. So that's kind of functional structure, organizational structure. And then what expectations or what protocols or how we create the mechanisms for people when they work together to work together in a collective way so that they're pointing in the same direction, kind of in complement to the structure. So what I'm trying to bring to life to you is, so we've, when we set out these values and we know what are the skills and the behaviors that we want, and we start, articulating and acting to convert values to action, we need to make sure that we set up the structures to facilitate and channel that. And then we set up the kind of the operating system, i.e. the protocols, the unwritten rules in the organization. And I kind of probably will say, let me say them, it's the unwritten rules of an organization. And I'm going to come on to those in a minute in the operating canvas. I'm going to do a little exercise on that. But first, let me just very briefly tell you about how to think about structuring for success. There's a thing called the operating model canvas. Mostly, and I've been involved in them all, Bain, McKinsey, BCG, Accenture, etc. When we do work around the structures in an organization, we all come back to using this idea of value chains. And the operating model canvas is basically a 7-step approach to designing an organization based on value and the chain of work that needs to be done to execute that value. Okay, so let me walk you through this kind of canvas here very quickly. And there's a consultancy, I think it's consulting. Yes, it is. It's consulting. It's actually a McKinsey model that's in here. So when we're thinking about organizing ourselves to do our best work, we start with what's the outcome? And if you think that of McKinsey, so it's the best general management advice. So that's the outcome that McKinsey wants. That's our strategy. And then what they do is they say, well, what's the process? So what's the value chain, or what's the sequence of work that needs to be done in what steps in order for us to deliver best general management advice? And at a really high level, they say we've got to hire and develop the best consultants. We've got to create IP, so we've got to create frameworks, and we've got to give them knowledge and intelligence to put with those frameworks to go and bring that to clients. So then they've got to build those client relationships. With those client relationships, with the IP and developing the best consultants, they've got to win projects and deliver projects. Like, it's really simple, right? And that is the consulting business, if you think about it. And when they start looking at that, then they start to say, right, who do we want to do what at each step in that value chain? So down here, you've got number 3. So how do we organize people, the best people, and make it really clear who does what at each step in the value chain in order to deliver value? And then they get into lots of other areas, like how do they work with suppliers? Where's the best location? So do we work virtually? Do we work in one location? Are we across locations? Where's the best place to actually bring people together to do work? And then what information do we need in order to know that work has been done in the right way? And then how do we manage them? So what's our governance mechanism? So what's our monthly meetings look like? How do we measure people? How do we performance manage them, etc., etc. And actually, if you think about that logic, there's only 7 steps. They're written down on the right-hand side. Any organization, small, medium, or large, just depends on the level of complexity and comprehensiveness. They essentially follow that route. But I'm giving you in the pack a really kind of simple blueprint for how to do that. So you can always do it on a 1 page. I whiteboard this with clients all the time. They love it because it actually starts to bring kind of the complex to the simple. So we get into saying, to create value, what are the meta steps? So what are the big steps we need to do? And then under each one of those steps, what are the activities that need to be done? What are the enablers to get every activity and every step complete? What's the output that we need? So at each stage, what's the output? And then what's the investment case? So how do we know that each step is creating value? And it's kind of a really simple way to facilitate or analyze and have a conversation about what's the right work for us to do and so on. Then we typically bring that down into and start building races. So this is kind of an example. You might have to just pinch your screen or blow your screen up if you can do that a little bit. Or I can go on, if you can't do that, let me know in the chat and I can blow it up. But this is kind of using that methodology. So this is how to develop a data analytics use case or a data product. And this is kind of the idea that so the value chain is, the business develops an idea for a potential use case for a data product. So for a propensity model. Then what they do is they go and have a 30-minute business consultation. So the business and the technology or the data people will come and they'll discuss that, and they'll see if everybody knows what they're trying to achieve. So that's kind of fusing collaboration. Then the technical people will go away and say, now we understand what the business are trying to achieve. We'll go away and do a technical evaluation. Then they'll get it prioritized, and there's usually some kind of mechanism to get it prioritized, maybe a backlog or a steering group or something like that. And then they go and they get the data, they prepare the model, they bring the model out to test, so deliver the MVP, they test, they learn, they iterate and get it ready, and then they deploy it into production. It's really simple, but it's unbelievable how organizations don't take the time to just write down what work needs to be done in order to deliver value. And then at each step, they go into the activities. So kind of almost stepping out. And in here, it's a little bit codified, but down here, we're identifying an RNA, responsible and accountable, and a communications, and a consulted, and an informed. So we use a kind of the RACI, responsible, accountable, communicated with, and informed. And then we say, who does what? So there's a business lead, there's a business data team, there might be a corporate data team, there might be a DPO, divisional IT, a working group. Now this is a live case where I brought kind of a complex set of players together. We whiteboarded this out and we agreed what work needs to be done, who's responsible for doing which activities at each step in the journey, what the output is. Separately, we'd identified what the enablers are. And ultimately, this breaks down and simplifies and actually codifies almost the work that needs to be done in order to deliver value. And we could spend a whole 8 weeks on operating model and so on and so forth, but I won't go any further than that with you, other than to show you that and to say to you that actually that simple approach is really important, but really easy to bring and exercise in an organization, to bring collective teams together. And it kind of dispels if you get people working and identifying this, the the kind of idea of who reports where, it solidifies that, but it kind of nullifies this idea that people are responsible for domains. People can see their role in a bigger value exercise, and they can see the part they play, and it tends to unlock a lot of that silo and domain kind of thinking and blockage that organizations sometimes get. Does that make sense to you all? Any questions, any queries? Pop them in the chat if you are. So that's about the hard, and that's about the structure. And I encourage you to have a think about, are you looking at your structures through the lens of value? Because most people look at their structures through the lens of responsibility and incentives and domain and their language and so on and so forth. Looking through it at the lens of what everybody needs to do in terms of value is critical. And if you think about then linking this back to Grace, linking this back to OKRs, in here you can start to see what objectives and key results can be identified for individuals or teams, so that everybody is then performance managed to play their part in delivering value along the chain. And then you can set up incentives to support, to encourage people to play their part to deliver value. And that's how we kind of engineer organizations today. Does that make sense, Grace, to kind of link that back to the OKRs as well? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So last piece I'm going to share with you today is, that's the hard structures that I've just covered, the operating model, right? So that's about the structure. But as we all know, there are unwritten rules and things that we do that we don't necessarily write down, or that are not in the structure of the organization. And they tend to be around these 12 items. It can be all of them, it can be some of them, it can be quite a few of them, or not so many of them, right? But I'm borrowing this from the Ready. The Ready are globally global leaders in terms of organizational dynamics. So they help an organizational design with the stuff like the operating model, but they've developed an operating system canvas, and it was one of the pre-reads was to go and look at the article. And in there, they kind of talk about the need to rewire organizations. That's the nervous system. And that's the idea of setting kind of new kind of act and respond mechanisms in the organization. We're ultimately setting kind of new practices and new unwritten rules. But this is the idea of writing them up, writing up the unwritten rules, right? And they essentially look through this 12 box grid, and they say, a really good test for every organization is to ask and probe a set of questions in each one of these boxes. So in relation to, our purpose, how do we orient and steer, the organization towards that reason for being, so customer obsessed, or empowering every organization to achieve more, or to think differently, in Apple's case, etc. And it's about posing the question, do we, and have we been really clear with articulating what is our reason for being, what is meaningful about our work, why does our purpose help us make decisions? And it's back to that idea of then in meetings, people, using the idea is, we're about to make a really important decision here. As the customer in the room, are we making the decision to leave the impact with the end user? Or are we making the decision in order to empower people or organizations to achieve more? So it's that idea of bringing purpose and actually bringing it into the kind of the rooms, the meetings, the discussions, and the decision making of the organization. So all this is it's a diagnostic, and it allows you to ask those kind of questions. The same about authority. So, who can tell others what to do? How do we make important decisions? What's safe to try? What's not safe to try? Who really has got the power in the organization? That's what authority is, authority of power. And this is huge, as you know, because different organizations power lies in different places. So in some organizations, technology is really strong and there's power in there, and technology are the ones that are driving innovation, or the ones that are driving digital, and they're ones that are defining the pace of change. That can be the case, and with really progressive CIOs and CTOs and so on, that can well be the case, and they can be, you know, the kind of the digital pioneers, kind of linking back to Mark's point earlier on. Equally, we can find that the power could be with the product people, because they're responsible for the P&L, and they're going to define, you know, what the experience is for their products, but they're going to do it by anchoring on commercial benefits, and they're trying to manage that side of things. Sometimes in organizations, the channel could be the power people. In other words, the people closest to the customer are the people who are saying, you know, we know what sells in the market. We're going to tell the organization what products the market needs, and then the product people are then going to tell technology what kind of capability or functionality is required, etc., etc. Damien, you have a question.
Apologies, get myself off mute. Hi, Garvin. Just a question on the operating campus. A lot of this kind of seems to be at an organizational level, like, you know, we were talking about CTOs and CFOs.
Yeah.
Can we, like, say, for example, if we wanted to take these learnings away into the future, right, outside of our assignments and also presentations, but also take a reflection on our own functional teams?
Yes.
Like, can you apply a lot of this really functional level as well, right?
Yeah.
Just to take a snapshot and say, well, how do we apply all of these to our functional team? And then, yeah,
totally. Everything today, actually, I believe could be applied at an individual level, at a team level, a functional level, an organizational level, and actually at a system level.
Yeah.
All of this. And I've used it all in all those mechanisms. So sometimes, Damien, when I sit down with leaders, when I'm business coaching, when I'm coaching them, I might give them this and say, go away, now work through this.
Yeah, because some of this is really good reflection. Like a lot of these questions you're asking, you know, I could challenge my own team and my own function. They're really good reflections. And
they are. And this I mean, you know, this is tried and tested. They already do this, you know, with all the late, you know, Air and so on, all the great and so on. And I've seen it in action. And I went, why would I try and invent something? I'm just going to share this with the world. And they've democratized this. I mean, again, back to leaders, right? So when you go to the Ready and you go to say, like, they're saying, this is how if we come and work with you, this is what we're going to do. Now, you get the magic of their experience when you're with them, right? And one of the things you'll find, Damien, is you need, when you're bringing this into your team, you need to be very thoughtful about how to use this for positive, as opposed to making sure that it's not energy sapping and negative, right? And when the likes of the Ready come in, they will do that, like with the CEO and the executive team and the board, where it all gets kind of high stakes and everyone gets antsy, right? So anyway, point is, the facilitation needs to be very thoughtful, so that when we ask the questions, we get one thing we could fix and two things we could do better. Do you know that kind of that bias, right? So it can become a very negative exercise, but it can become a very energetic. And when I'm facilitating it, I'm kind of 2 for 1 all the time. So what's the thing that's not working well? What are the 2 things that are working really well? How can we do more of the things that are working well and fix that one thing that isn't? And again, that's back into 1 degree of difference every day. You know, it's easier to do more of what you're doing good. It's harder to fix things that you're not doing so well. Yeah. And break it down 1 thing at a time. 2 things good, 1 thing harder, you know, anyway, you get the idea. Yeah. But I think the authority point of just dwelling on that. But you can see in everyone, you know, it's very motherhood and apple pie as you're reading around, you know, so how do we plan and prioritize? That's strategy. Do you know what I mean? So how do we invest our time and money? So that's ambidextrous. So how much do we put into exploit? How much do we put into explore? How does that connect back to strategy? You know, if things crop up, how do we respond? A lovely set of questions. Innovation, you know, so what's the practice that we use? You know, are we design thinkers? You know, who has the right to innovate? Everybody, nobody. Those guys over there in the innovation unit, you know, just because these are the things that are not written down in structures, but these are the unwritten rules. This is the way that it's a diagnostic, or it's a way to untangle actually how your structure operates, or your nervous system that kind of makes your structure function, if you get the idea. Workflow, so what's the relationship across silos? So who initiates projects, who cancels them, who completes them, who triages them, who kills them? Really important question for an organization. I always include that in the workflow one, or in the decision-making one. Who's got the power to stop things? And even by asking that question, you can find that your team or your organization will say, actually, we never stop anything. And I bet you most of your organizations will say that, and most of you find that you don't stop anything, right? But actually, this is just a way to ask ourselves the question. Membership, right? So, and that's membership is kind of back to very much into kind of deep-rooted soft cultural stuff, right? So how do we onboard people? How do we integrate people? How do we say goodbye to people? Because that can set a really important tone in an organization. So I'm sure you've all joined organizations and teams, or worked with bosses who really welcomed you in and invested time, ingratiated you, empowered you, enabled you to push you forward. And some of you, I'm sure, have worked for teams or bosses or whatever, who kind of just let you sit in the corner and stew. These are really important questions that you never see written down in a structure chart, but are really important questions in a structure to make the structure hum. So these questions and these dynamics, these unwritten rules, are all about the structural humming, if I was to describe it that way. Mastery, and that's all about learning and development. Compensation, we've covered that already today. Information, how do we and that's part to do with performance management. Okay, I've covered quite a bit of that, but really important slide. And there's a canvas. You go to theready.com, you download the canvas, they'll give you the instructions. I'm kind of giving them to you here as well today. Kind of back to your point, Damien, I've worked with organizations and teams across Europe who've kind of taken 12 months and kind of taken a box a month, right? And have systemically almost rewired themselves in that kind of way, in a programmatic sense. And they've built and they've learned, and actually learning to think about your system and learning to work on your system is probably the most important thing that I would reflect upon. So it's actually starting and thinking and learning and refining how you ask the question, answer the question, and implement change so that you can see success coming. But breaking it down, I think, is really important. So I would never recommend to anybody to kind of go in and do a 12-box kind of assessment. You'll just get lost in the detail. Mostly what I'll say to people is, let's take one at a time, or let's identify 3 that you think are really important. And often we do that in a workshop, and we put up the 12, and we do dot voting. Where do people think we would get more bang for buck, or where do we think the biggest positive is? So give me 2 of our strongest and 1 of our weakest, and then we work on 3 of them, 2 strong ones to improve them, and 2 weak one, or 1 weak one to work it forward. So again, that little bit of science and facilitation is really important. But it's the idea, it's back again to constructive dissatisfaction. This is constructive dissatisfaction about your structure, because your structure is usually very little to do with how you're organized. You need to make sure you're organized to create the best value and that everyone knows what they should do in the right sequence. That's structure. But actually, it all comes down to system and getting people to systemically, break down and be constructively dissatisfied and improve their system by 1 degree of difference every day. For me, that's a really important way forward. Does that make sense, everybody? Is that okay?
Yeah, very useful. Thanks, Gavin.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is, for the last half an hour, is do a little exercise. So I better test and do this before I put you into breakout rooms, right? But what I'm going to do is, have a little reflection, maybe yourself for the first couple of minutes on, where do you maybe score high, medium, low, kind of like I'm saying. And then maybe get into a room and discuss, don't do the bottom 3 blocks, just pick 1 block. I should have changed that slide, I didn't, sorry. I wanted just us to go into a breakout room. I'll put you in twos. Go into a breakout room. Have a sense before of one that you think you should be working on as an organization. When you go into the field, I'll let you do the 2 and 1, but pick one that's kind of you think needs most work, and start to actually discuss how you would answer the questions that are in this. So, you know, you might pick innovation, and you might have a discussion about who participates in innovation. Those of you are dialing off. Who participates in innovation? What's the role of failure and learning? How do we balance short-term and long-term? Just start talking about how do we do innovation, and start talking about, you know, what's your observations. And once you get observations, then you can lead to conclusions and solutions. The idea here is this is just to get you to get observations, conclusions, and then ideally solutions. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing. I will just, sorry, forgive me, I have to end show here at the same time. Are you all still with me? I haven't killed the room. Great. Let me just change the slide as I had intended to do. Let me copy that slide. Let me put it into the chat so I don't make, we don't cause that difficulty again. I can check with you in real time. Okay, to do it a slightly different way, I have to take a picture. I'll take a picture of this one actually, so you'll be able to see it better. I'll put a picture of the 2 in. Sorry, this will make sense in a second. Okay. When you check your chat, can everybody see that? You should be able to carry that into the breakout rooms. Okay. Everybody able to see that okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, all good?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that's the exercise. But basically it's get in, have a quick look through, say, my God, where do I think we could be better? And then will you have a chat and talk out loud your observations in relation to the question. Easy as that. How's that sound? All good?
Yep.
Great, super stuff. So I'm going to recreate that. There are now 27 of us. So that breaks us down into, I'll do 13 rooms. So I recreated those rooms, opened those rooms, and we'll see you in about 10 or 15 minutes. And then we'll bring today to a wrap. Okay, everybody in the room. Orla, you with us and you okay? It's warm. Take my tablets for the day. And put this on pause. All good? Okay, everyone will be coming back in a minute. We'll get everybody in, get any final thoughts, and we'll move to a wrap. Okay, Shino, welcome back. Chris, welcome back. Good to see you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Just give everybody a minute to regather and regroup.
We have a card.
Everyone good?
Yep.
Very good. Welcome back. Okay, most of us are back, at least the ones that are still with us. With a few people dialed off for that. Donald, sorry, I didn't catch that you weren't in a room, but I know you're catching up yourself there. Any thoughts, any feedback from the exercise? You don't have any perspectives you'd like to share? Do please share for the benefit of your. Yeah. Grace had her hand up. And
yeah, I think Joe is going.
No, you
no
go
worries.
ahead. No, you go ahead, Grace. You're fine.
Well, I was with you out in in the in the breakout room, and we were talking about the authority dimension, and I asked him if he has like employee performance tracking, and he said like pretty the same as me. The resource like he has, but he has the belief like there is not like a equal employee tracking performance. So
Yeah.
I say to him like the example, like to get that to know exactly how to assign more tasks to someone. I think the manager has to be present, has to understand our job, has to understand if we are doing things more complicated. And as my manager, say to me, it's not like about leave it there. You have to. It's about make the things happen to him. Like how we can make the things easier for you, or how we can improve that. And I find like
Yeah.
from my point of view, if there was employee performance tracking, like who evaluates exactly our job, and motivates us, it will be, I think, a motivator, I would say, from my point of view.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
We were talking
Yeah.
something like that.
yeah. Brilliant, great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And we were kind of chose authority, but we kind of understand that we don't need to be so authority, you know what I mean? Like don't be so tough, but like embrace, but using authority to make sure things happen in an efficient way and not in an authority way, you know what I mean? I don't know what to how to
totally.
balance it. Yeah,
No,
you
really
know.
good, really good. I mean, there's a couple of points just if they're worth reflecting for a sec. So one is around performance management, really good point. And you'll often find in an organization that there's sometimes a bias towards positive performance management. Telling everybody all the good things that they do and everybody's brilliant and so on and so forth. And that can create quite a kind of a septic culture, because there's always people who aren't doing as much as other people. That's just
Yeah.
that's daily life, right? And in organizations and more, where there's this idea of self-actualization and liberation and democratization, people are more aware, more conscious of what they do and more aware of those around them, and the kind of idea of, self-actualization. And more we've seen this in cultures where if leaders don't manage bad performance, they'll end up with poorer performance overall on aggregate, because people have an expectation that when I'm giving and I'm doing well, I want to be rewarded for that, but when other people aren't, I don't want them to be rewarded. So managing poor performance is becoming more important than actually managing up and managing forward good performance. I maybe don't make it too binary, but I don't know if that resonates back with you, Grace, and in terms of the dynamic. But certainly,
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
Yes.
I do agree because like this, like you get a new employee, you get training, you get they involved, it's money, it's time, So in the overall, like, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna pay,
Yeah,
It's gonna have
yeah,
anyway. Thanks, Garvin.
not
Thank
at all.
you.
Thank you, Donald. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to share that just in terms of trying to identify the the where my organization would fit kind of or score lowest. There seemed to be a common denominator between how the hierarchical kind of structure that they have in place and that they observe seems to impact like lots of the squares in terms of the workflow and the information and the innovation, obviously the structure as well. Yeah, that just struck me. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, no, you're so right. Now, one of the slides you'll get in your pack, and it's just a kind of a summary on the pre-read. I'm just trying to find it here. Is around. I have a couple of slides. One is I did ask you to have a look at maybe the Deloitte Global Human Trends report, and it's a really good report. It's very detailed. There's a lot in it, but there's kind of this idea of navigating tensions, and that it's never a binary thing. So, agility with stability, they call it stagility, and so on and so forth. So organizations are trying to make shifts. Empowerment versus control is the one that you're kind of relating to, I think, Donald, and it's worth it. Like, there's some good mini articles on each one of these, but it actually maps really well back to, and believe it or not, 2019, again, was a seminal report that Deloitte gave around how to think about engineering the human capital of an organization. And I think in here, they talk about this idea of super jobs, that harness human technology organization. But basically, there's a principle behind it, and the principle of empowerment, and it's the principle of servant leadership, and it's the idea that hierarchies are bottlenecks, and they stifle, and so on and so forth. And actually, when you read most of this literature, and when you think about it yourself, bottlenecking, stifling, usually comes from hierarchy. Bureaucracy comes in hierarchy, etc., etc. So flatter, more self-propelling, purpose-led, rotated talent, all those kind of things, they're the signs of vitality, of cultural and organizational vitality, Donald. So I don't know if that's relating back, but I think it's a really important point that you're touching on. Okay, anybody had any other thoughts before we move to? So thank you, Donald. Great inputs, and Grace and Yao, great inputs as well. Anything in the chat that I haven't seen? Let me see here. We talked about, go ahead. Margrazata, you had a comment, yes, but if you want to talk about what we talked about, go ahead. So anything, Margrazata, that I'm not picking up there, now forgive me.
So we were, hi Gerben.
Hi.
And we were talking about actually we picked the master competence, and we unfortunately we didn't have enough time to touch all the points, but we started actually talking about the organization, the financial organization, and like banking or corporation, and their approach on the learning and development, and especially mandatory trainings provided by the organization. Yeah, so we unfortunately, I cannot completely provide the feedback because we didn't discuss in full. We were we only touched the base of the point of view of my colleague, and yeah, so we didn't. So I don't want to. I can only express my view.
No, you express the importance of it. And my final slide of today, Margrazata, is actually on education and learning. And Malcolm X's, really one of my favorite quotes. Education is the passport to the future. Tomorrow belongs to those prepared for today. And because tomorrow is coming quicker than it ever was before,
I'm very actually. I'm sharing the importance of. Knowledge and learning, and actually constant learning. So
lifelong learning is kind of the way that people frame what's necessary in today's environment. And learning can be thought of in three different ways. There's formal learning, there's non-formal, and there's informal. And what organizations do when they're kind of engineering it, they're engineering learning on those three fronts. So there's formal, so there's domain specific or accredited, graduateship, apprenticeship, formal programs like this, I guess. There's non-formal, so there's this idea of how can you expose people to learning, but not necessarily through academic means or training means. So rotating them, mentoring them, coaching them, guiding them, sending them out to see seminars, events, go and visit other organizations. And then there's informal ones, which is people learn from observing, people learn from sharing, people learn from reading and referencing, and so on and so forth. And organizations who are engineering learning have a formal, non-formal, and have informal learning. So it was my final slide, and a perfect one to maybe come in on as we head for 3 o'clock. In your pack, you get all those kind of slides and some reflection points. But just to bring us to a close, I said to you that I'm happy to hang on if anybody wants to hang on for any Q&A or anything like that. So I'm here. But maybe we'll kind of move to a formal close on the basis that you can continue on yourself, or or it's a beautiful day. If it is with you, you might want to use it and come back and finish out today's session. So you have that choice now by the fact that Aidan McCullen, who is a thought leader, author, and a stand-up guy who kind of brings a concept of undisruptible to life at a very personal level. And he joined us a couple of years ago, and he gave us a recording. And because if you want Aidan to come and speak to your organisation, you need to put multiples of thousands, quite a few, away to get him to speak. But he came and he gave us a session, and he gave us the authority to kind of reshare it with people. So I'm going to reshare it with you. It's from a couple of years ago. The YouTube link is down there, so all you have to do is go to the YouTube link. And Aidan starts at 1 minute 55 minutes into the recorded session. So it's one of these a couple of years ago. It's in COVID times, so you'll see a very hairy version of me, long beard and long hair and all that sort of stuff, before I could get back to the barbers. So forgive that. And it's Aidan talking about his principles and concepts for how to be undisruptible. And it's a really enjoyable one. And what I would love to suggest you do, go and take that recording, have a look at it. Go if you're having a walk, or just on now, or in your own time. It's worth. He has some lovely imagery, and it's a very visual presentation as well. And it's well worth watching. And for me, kind of just wanted to share that with you to kind of close the loop today. That and a lovely Mark's question right from the top. Digital leadership, it starts with the self, but it only extends and takes real hold if it moves to the many, to the all. But starting with the self is really important. And maybe to close today, go and have a look at Undisruptible, and see if you can, ask yourself the question, whether it's by thinking about what Aidan will share with you in his means and mindset and philosophies about being undisruptible, or through the operating system canvas, or look through the 9 dimensions of culture that we've covered today, and ask yourself the question, and both for your assignment, but I would say broader in professional life, which of course tilts into personal life. Are you leading to build the cultures for success in today's world for tomorrow? And that's really what I wanted to impart and engender for you today. So I will leave all that with you. And now I would say then formally at 3 o'clock, let's move to a wrap up. Thank you for joining. Happy to stay on if anybody has any questions and queries. And otherwise, we'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Gavin.
Cheers. Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you, Gavin. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin.
Thank you, Gavin.
Right, Malgorzata, let's
Gavin.
Yeah,
so just a quick, because actually about knowledge and studying. So where do you think the knowledge actually lead us to?
From this program, Malgorzata?
No. I'm talking not. I'm talking in general.
Okay. So are you kind of posing the question of how or what?
No, I'm actually asking where and where exactly the knowledge and the constant, because I believe actually in learning very much.
Yeah.
And where this where the learning, studying, and knowledge lead us to.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of things in there, but we kind of keep it succinct. I think it's entirely necessary to learn every day. without sounding glib. Certainly my practices are to do it. I'm not saying that I'm any better for it or what I am because of it, but I know I do. As I say, every morning I read, and every morning, and I kind of try and construct the knowledge that I'm trying to consume, from sources that will give me a diverse view of the world. And I just do that kind of informal, that observation every day, right? So that's my informal, because what I want to know is understand the kind of the patterns of the world, because I think that's really important for us, because then if we understand the patterns of the world, we can think about responding. I do then have some non-formal learning and formal learning that I do. So I'm only sharing you my experience. So my formal learning is every year I participate in some kind of formal learning exercise. So I haven't done one this year, but I'm scheduling to do one in the second half of the year. Last year I didn't, but I wrote and launched a book, and actually for me that was a learning exercise. Prior year I completed the Institute of Director program, and I can go back, but basically every year I've been trying to learn, but I have a kind of a canvas of topics, Malgorzata, that I'm interested in. So leadership, technology, consulting, business models, AI. In most recent years, I've done a couple of programs on AI and so on and so forth. So I almost have created a tapestry, or a kind of almost a scorecard, or how do you want to
different disciplines and different fields
disciplines that I want to learn. So I observe and I learn, and then actually through this, my teaching, if you want to call it teaching, and my lecturing, and also my writing, but then also through a lot of peer work that I do, I kind of create formal and informal mentoring and coaching partnerships. So I have a number of those that I use informally to kind of test my thinking. So my clients and my students test my thinking all the time, which is great. But
it's challenging. It's I think it's like reciprocal, and that's really important actually.
So you have to open up means to
have a discussions and to exchange different point of views, and that's really important.
That's right.
So do you? Sorry, because I'm disturbing you.
No, I was going to say. So if I have three eyes, I've information. And I've got some ingestion, or in terms of formal, and then I've got inspiration. So I look for multiple means to kind of continue to build and test my thinking. So I don't know if that helps, but yeah.
But are you sharing the opinion that knowledge and learning on one hand side is actually someone said feedback is a gift. Knowledge is a gift, but at the same time it's not so much appreciated in today's world and environment, and can be your cursing point. Sometimes I have this feeling that more I know, less I know.
Yeah. Again, if you go to my LinkedIn, I've written about a thing called the Pygmalion effect. Was it the Pygmalion or the Dunning-Kruger effect? Actually, it was. So I'm mixing them up. But it's this idea of the less you know about something, but more you believe that you know about something, that can be incredibly dangerous. So not knowing, but believing that you know is incredibly dangerous. Yeah. And then knowing too much to be scared, to knowing so much that you know how much you don't know can be equally as dangerous. And there's kind of two spectrums. There's people who don't know anything, who are very
Yeah,
dangerous.
and you had
Yeah.
yeah, and if you keep actually learning, and so you have this kind of hunger of self developing and improving and there is no stop, and there is and more you know, you realize that you don't know.
Yeah, like, there is an old thing. I forget who said it. But the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And I found that in the world. I mean, but I want to keep knowing what I don't know to help me to know what I need to know. Do you know what I mean? So I close that loop on that saying.
Okay,
Okay. Paulette, you had your hand up. Sorry, how you doing? Yeah, no problem. Take your time.
Sorry there. Yeah, I just had to remove my open the audio, but just on the knowledge bit, fascinating and all the rest of it. For me, trying to continuously learn has just always brought me options.
Yeah.
And that's my driver.
Yeah.
Because when something doesn't suit, I have the option to move on, but not everyone within the team always has that option.
Yeah.
So for me, it buys me options and therefore other opportunities.
Yeah. So I love that point, and I think it's brilliant. And I worked in 2 or 3 organizations where we've done 2 systemic things to create confidence and a resulting number of things. But let me tell you what the levers were, and then the confidence, and then I'll relate it, right? So the first one is rotation. So one of the things that organizations really suffer with is domain speciality, and is kind of this idea of career laddering in a domain and not rotating. Like, we all know multinational organizations, you want to go and work with Pfizer or, GE, that you've got to work at least across, 3 different regions in, 3 different domains before you're considered for, a general management role. So you've got to be immersed in different cultures for you to move to mastery, right? So if you want to move to mastery, you actually got to, master multiple, so I think that's the first one. So that rotation. And then the second one is, as you're rotating, because that's informal learning, you've got to accompany that with formal learning. So you should be doing your masters and so on and so forth. So, this idea of pracademic, so creating those pracademic environments. But why? I think so that you can build confidence, but also build personal capacity for change, Paulette. And I think this is really important, that this links to your options, right? And I so believe in what you've said, because the more you practice stimulating yourself, challenging yourself, exposing yourself to new things, new cultures, new learning, the more you learn to, like I said, the more you know, the more you learn that you don't know, and therefore the more humble you become, the more gracious you become, the more observant you become, and it makes a better you by being exposed and by being stretched in different ways. I don't know if I'm making any sense, Paulette, but
yeah. Teaches you how to react in a really flexible approach and manner.
Yeah, totally.
You see that at the very height of people who are really professional.
Yeah.
And that's how you understand how they got to where they're at.
Yeah.
And then you can look at other people maybe on the board, and you can see that they haven't had that level of exposure.
That's right.
And it's kind of obvious. But anyway, that wasn't the question I had in mind, by the way. And
sorry,
I'm not sure if you've had the chance, so apologies for that. But I just thought it was quite interesting that you were having that discussion. My question, actually, and I don't know again whether you've already asked it, is, or whether it's already been answered, is in and around the assignment. So because we've already covered 7 of the tools, the levers, we now need to provide a 1,500 word assignment response for CAA2. Are we only building, if we're comfortable enough with what we've already done for the 1,000 word components, do we only now need to write 500 words, I think it's 500, on the other 3 levers?
I won't get hard and fast on that. So I'm going to leave that to your better judgment. So I don't have a hard yes or no on that. What I would say is, if you write to me just on the 3 and the roadmap, and in there you refer, I've already done the other 7, that's fine. I'm really happy with that. But if you want to cover the 10 and the roadmap in the 1,500 words and recycle or start again, and that's why I don't want to give you, binary direction on it, Paul. What I would say is, it's all fine. Any way you want to.
Okay.
Anyway.
And I guess the missing element is clearly because we haven't had the response yet, and it's slightly difficult in terms of the direction we now take.
I know. No, I know. It is the
just to badger you even further. I'm so sorry.
You and I find it, but it's it's how it works. It's how the academic cycle works. So we're kind of working to that.
No worries.
And I am working as hard, as quick as I can to get through get them out.
Please don't stress.
No, I'm not. No, not at all. No. I want you guys to get it as quick as I can humanly possibly get it to you. But
we're equally Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, but we're equally understanding and developing our knowledge as you've continued with the additional levers. So we probably know where we need to improve as well.
Absolutely. The idea doing the first assignment is, look, it's all about working to the assessment, the second assignment. The first one is really to get you on the ladder to get you there.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that.
Not at all. Thank you. Great. Okay. Happy to call it at that. There's a couple of things in the chat. Let me just check them.
I have one question, Gavin, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I was away for the prior workshop, so I have to catch up on the recording and that. So you may have answered this already. So shoot me down if you have, no issue. So just in terms of assignment 2, when we do the 10 vectors, whether we redo them or add on to the 7, that's fine. We have our 1,500 piece, our stakeholder mapping, etc. There's a couple of additional elements here. So the operating canvas, digital technology piece. I couldn't see those in the submission requirement. Should we put those in ourselves anyway, and our thoughts around that? Is that beneficial, or should we not? So when I look at the requirements, you may have covered this because they could have been covered in the previous workshop. I have to catch that recording.
No worries. So on Tuesday, I'm going to give you the 10 slides.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've already given you 7. So the 7 I've given you for assignment 1.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you another 3 on Tuesday. One for tech, 1 for people, and 1 for risk.
Okay.
And the reference that I made, and the one for people is going to be the operating system. So I think
okay, so that joins the dot. Okay, no, that's perfect. That joins the dot. And I was wondering. Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks, Gavin.
Sorry if that hasn't been all clear to you.
No, there's no problem. That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. No, that's fine. We'll cover off that on Tuesday. Cool. Okay. We call it a wrap.
Great stuff.
Great,
thank you very much. Great stuff. Thanks, Gavin.
Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Great weekend.
Bye. You too. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. You too. Bye.